Hello everyone, welcome to the world of modeling at 3 Cats Studio. This time we are going to create a diorama of a famous battle during the Crusades, the Siege of Acre in 1291. In this video, I will show the complete production process, sharing tips and some stories behind the scenes. If you enjoy our works, please subscribe to our YouTube channel to help us create more great content. Thanks a lot. Recently, I played the final chapter of the Ayyubid campaign in Age of Empires 4. Driven by curiosity, I dug up a lot of relevant information about this period of history and decided to make a diorama with this theme. Starting in 1095, the protracted and far-reaching War of the Crusades lasted for nearly 200 years, until the fall of Acre in 1291, marking the end of this history. In the final battle, Acre was almost captured. The few Crusaders fought the Mamluk soldiers on the last defensive tower to the last man. This exact historical moment is what I will recreate this time. The design of the city wall towers refers to the remains of the Crusader castle and Acre. The scale of the model is 1/50th. The size of each plane has been calculated during modeling and split into different modules. Now we need to cut the high-density XPS foam board into the planned pieces. This is a 4-story tower. The tower's foundation is higher than usual, for it's built near the sea. Here I cut dozens of different foam blocks into different sizes, which looks a bit messy. After putting them together, you can see the general shape of the model. The structure of the entire model has been formed, and now we can continue working on the details. I started by adding some small windows to the wall. They serve as both light and shooting holes. Then use a small carving knife to carve out the damage on the edge of the tower wall. After finishing the openings and edges of the entire tower like this, it's time to add brick seams to the interior and exterior walls. Pay special attention to the changes in the arrangement of brick seams in different building locations. The gaps between the walls can be filled with putty later. The surface of these stone piles also needs to be textured. Some of the bricks I would cut directly from the wall. But the shapes and placement of most scattered stones require some design to make them more reasonable. I will also look for pictures of real ruins for reference during production. Although most of the walls in Acre today were rebuilt during the Ottoman period, archaeological excavations have revealed that walls from the Crusader era have been preserved, witnessing this history as a world cultural heritage. The cutting part is now completed, but before coloring, it is necessary to fill the gaps on the surface of the entire model with putty. This process is relatively long, and no skills are required except patience. So I would like to talk more about the historical background of this siege. Already in 1191, after the Crusaders lost Jerusalem, Acre became the capital. Later in 1291, the Crusader states had lost all their fortresses and cities except Acre. The city walls were funded by European kings and wealthy Holy Land pilgrims, which consisted of 2 layers of walls and 12 large towers. It was a solid defense at the time, but the Sultanate also had the most advanced siege technology and equipment. In 1290, when the Mamluk dynasty of Egypt began to mobilize, the Kingdom of Jerusalem sent envoys to the Pope for help. Pope Nicholas IV wrote letters to European monarchs urging them to take action. However, these letters were without exception fruitless. It was much more difficult to call for new crusading aid than in the early days of the Crusades. On the one hand, the name of the Crusaders has been abused and has become too much of a tool for secular power struggles. On the other hand, continuous military defeats have also made those participants who want to take advantage of the opportunity gradually lose confidence. In the end, the Pope only temporarily assembled 1,600 troops in Italy to support Acre. Although there were also a few knights who responded, these forces were nothing compared to the Mamluk army. Despite the huge disparity in strength between the two sides, relying on Acre's solid defense, the defenders did not lose confidence and refused to surrender and hand over the city. In medieval sieges, mantelets were essential defensive equipment. On the battlefield, an archer or crossbowman, sometimes accompanied by a man-at-arms to move the mantelet, took shelter behind it when pausing to reload. Soldiers can push the shield to move and adjust the angle of the wooden shield's defensive surface. As the siege lines crept closer to the walls of a castle or city, the mantelet's angled face would deflect or stop incoming missile fire from the walls. But this one is a bit different. It has no shooting holes. It was used as a bunker for soldiers digging tunnels. In arid desert areas, where the soil is generally soft, the soldiers dug deep holes under the walls and then set them on fire, and the fortress above them collapsed. My reference is this 14th century illustration from the French Chronicle of the Siege, showing the Mamluks breaching the city walls. The method is pretty simple. You can also do it yourself. This time I made 2 shields, one of which will be made to look like it has been damaged in battle. After a simple color touch-up for the wheels and metal parts, the shield is complete. Next comes the part of processing the soldiers. This time, I printed about 40 medieval-style soldiers. These included Crusaders, Mamluk soldiers, and the Sultan's tribesmen and mercenaries. Some had no helmets or turbans, so I used model putty to make modifications to cover their heads and faces. The scene took place in the desert, and soldiers from both sides had to withstand the wind, sand, and sun. The elite of the Mamluk Sultan's army were mainly well-equipped Turks. From the age of 14, they studied in specialized military schools and received writing, archery, and physical training. In the battles against the Mongols and Europeans, they all demonstrated superb combat skills. But such expensive professional soldiers were only a handful in ancient times. More of the troops under the Sultan were tribal people and mercenaries organized by local chiefs. These troops were complex, consisting of nomads, farmers, and a small number of slaves, many of whom were Bedouins from the desert, and even from the upper reaches of the Nile River, and even as far away as Mali, West Africa. They came for the spoils of war and were under the command of an emir or sultan. As mentioned earlier, by this period, the Crusaders no longer had the glory they had in the past. The Templars were soon destroyed after losing their territory in the Levant. Although the Knights Hospitaller and the Knights of Jerusalem still exist today, they have long lost their military significance and exist more as religious organizations. I referred to many pictures and movies of the clothing on both sides. This part is not completely realistic, but more to distinguish the characters. Judging from the manuscripts of the time, there was not much difference in the attire of the soldiers on both sides. And it was more the climate that determined what people wore. By this point, all actors and props are in place. It's time to put them into the scene. Thank you very much for watching. If you're fond of miniature models and would like to learn more behind-the-scenes stories, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you for your support. We will continue to create more exciting and interesting content. The last part will be a short video of the finished product. You can't miss it. See you next time.